So the next bracket is a bracket of 4 wines. We keep this bracket of Castiglione Filetto commune wines together. Just because it makes such a fascinating tasting to see wines from vineyards that in some cases are only 50 or 100 meters apart, or those vineyard their patches of vines are only not very far apart, to see how different the wines can be even in the same commune. Castiglione Filetto is the home commune for Sordo. The winery is in the corner of Castiglione Filetto, just off the Alba to Barolo Road. And I guess their core vineyard is Rocche di Castiglione, but over the years they've been collecting parcels of this commune in particular, and at least 3 of these are acknowledged as the Grand Crus I've referred to before. The first of them, Perussi, is the most bountiful of the wines. It's the chubby one, we call it. It gives you Castiglione Filetto's gorgeous characters of cranberry, flowers, particularly a character of fading flowers, a vase of fading flowers, which is really, really attractive. As a vase is, well, just about maybe a day or two from being thrown out, but it's really, its perfumes are at their strongest. But it also has the characters of the earth, characters of tobacco leaf. That might not be politically correct these days, but it's a beautiful, fresh leaf is a beautiful smell. And some hints of dark spices, brown spices. They're the characteristics you get of Castiglione Filetto. As well, it's a wine without the exaggerated structure of what we're about to see with the last couple of wines in the next bracket, where the tannins and the structure are really powerful in your mouth, almost too powerful for some people, and especially until the wines age a little bit. Castiglione Filetto wines are the most balanced of all of the wines. So the structures, the feel in the mouth, just sit there in support of what essentially are really beautiful, complex wines. So Perussi has all these characters in a big, soft, juicy bounty, which happened really perfectly for them in 2017. And that brings us to the trio, if you like. We always look at these together, if the tasting allows, of Rocche di Castiglione, Villero and Monprivato. I've just said 3 of the undoubtedly the top 10 names, the vineyard names of Barolo in those 3 terms. Rocche di Castiglione is a long vineyard that sits across the top of a ridge. The soil's changed from one end to the other. Sordo's portion is very sandy soil, but it gives a wine of real depth. And it's also a wine, incidentally, that every single vintage I've ever had, it always performs. It just always performs. Doesn't matter if it's called a wet vintage or a cold vintage or a hot vintage. This vineyard just seems to perform all the time. And if you give it enough breathing time, it's the most remarkably complex wine. I've had a version, some of my wine tasting friends will attest to this. I've seen these wines at 25 and 30 years of age, unidentified, and been able to say, because of that cranberry character, that's a Castiglione Filetto wine, and it might even be Rocche di Castiglione. I'm not boasting about that as much as saying that when you've tasted enough of these things, this Castiglione Filetto character becomes imprinted, and it's really beautiful. It's some people say they're the most Burgundy-like wines because of this balance, this ability for them to open up for you as time goes on. The next wine, Villero, possibly my favourite vineyard of all. My favourite Barolo, probably of the last 10 or 15 years, has come from another producer, not one of my producers, but another producer of this vineyard. Just the most beautiful wines, the most, when you pour them, you can, when you first pour them, you can say, what's going on here? There's nothing going on, and then just gradually they open up with this incredible, these little nuances one after the other. It's on the red side of fruits, cherry skin, cranberry skin, um, little bit of other red fruits, maybe raspberry, but more of that red flowers, a lot of florals, but also things like earth and spices that come in and out of the wines, that tobacco character I was talking about before. But it does it very slowly and very Dance of the Seven Veils, maybe. That's Villero. Um, the last of the wines is probably the most famous vineyard of all of theirs. It's Monprivato. Most of the Barolo people that were interested in Barolo always thought that this vineyard Monprivato was the monopole, the sole vineyard owned by the producer Giuseppe Mascarello. But it turns out that these people, Sordo, have a little piece of it. I think it's around about 8 or 9%, a very tiny bit. We visited it last year, the first time I'd ever been into the actual vineyard of Monprivato, and you can see why nobody or hardly anybody ever gets there, because it's, in Barolo terms, it's in the middle of nowhere and extremely hard to get to and very, very steep. But what a vineyard! And it's made some of Barolo's greatest and most powerful wines under the name of Giuseppe Mascarello. And Sordo, although they've owned it for some decades, in fact they lease it. It's a long-term lease from the Catholic Church, I believe. They've worked their piece of it for some decades, but it's only since 2013 that they've made a wine from it. It's everything I've said about the Castiglione Filetto wines, but with real forcefulness. It's really the strongest of these four wines. And in that way, it's why the last two, for example, would be so polarizing. Rocche di Castiglione is, if you like, the distillation of the two, the combination of the two, but the delicacy of Villero is a real contrast with the forcefulness of many of the same characters, but that you get in Monprivato. Some people say, without a doubt, the greatest vineyard of Barolo. It's certainly, the wines nowadays sell for over $1,000 a bottle. The other wine from Monprivato sells for over $1,000 a bottle. In fact, €1,000 a bottle, I think, if you go to a wine shop in Rome or Milan. So it's clearly made its mark as one of the great vineyards of the world. We're very lucky that Giovanni Sordo has a little piece and does such a brilliant wine of it year after year. This 2017 is well worth tracking down.